General David Petraeus went before the House Armed Services Committee today with a strongly worded message.
Americans should not take the current international order for granted. It did not will itself into existence. We created it.
It was a clear rebuke to the isolationist leanings of the Trump team, whose Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, was confirmed by the Senate today. Tillerson will inherit a State Department reeling from Trump's polarizing immigration order and the abrupt departure of longtime diplomats like Tom Countryman. Josh Hurst spent the morning with him on his first day out of the Foreign Service in more than 30 years.
Tuesday was Tom Countryman's last day at the State Department. He was one of a half dozen senior career officials who were notified last week that they needed to clean out their desks. Countryman, who was acting Under Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, was considering retirement this year anyway. But new administrations usually wait until there's a replacement before dismissing high-level officials. The day he got the call, Countryman was busy in Jordan on a diplomatic mission.
I've worked for 6 presidents, 4 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And I have, like my colleagues in both the Foreign Service and the Civil Service, always adhered to the dictum that we must implement faithfully the policies of the president, and that if we cannot do that in good conscience, then it's our obligation to leave. I think most diplomats have had crises of conscience at some point. My own example is in 2003, President Bush's decision to invade Iraq. I swallowed my disagreement, and I went up and down Italy giving speeches defending the president's actions in Iraq. That's what a loyal public servant does.
Do you think you would have been prepared if they'd asked you to stay on to advance some of their policies?
I was prepared to stay for several months. I think the kind of crisis of conscience that I described would have become extremely acute for me in a very short time. But I was prepared to stay until there was a successor appointed.
But what's different this time? Why more acute than the Iraq War?
I think there are a number of indications of foreign policy malpractice that this administration is going to pursue. First is its inclination to build economic walls around the United States. Second, I fear that we are already giving up U.S. leadership in the world. When the president said we will not participate in the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement, there was no one happier than the president of China, who immediately stepped forward and offered to lead an alternative trade arrangement on Chinese terms, not on American terms. And finally, I'm concerned about whether this president is prepared to be firm in standing up to Russian intervention in the Ukraine and Russian attempts to interfere in other countries in the same way that they interfered in this country.
Are they just policy conflicts, or is it something more fundamental?
What I see in terms of the vocabulary and the steps that the president is taking, they are frighteningly similar to what I've witnessed up close in Serbia, what I've witnessed from a greater distance in places like Russia and Hungary. And I think that it is essential that Americans stand up and push back, not against all the distractions, not against all the alternate facts that are peddled by the White House, but to stand up against the concrete actions that this White House is taking that corrode our democracy.
Rex Tillerson, did you deal with him at all?
I've heard good things about him. I know people who have worked with him directly, who tell me that he's a serious, highly intelligent, well-organized individual and a born leader. I hope that he defends the State Department, not only the people, but the State Department's role in foreign policy formation, and that he doesn't simply cede all of that authority to the White House.
Do you think you maybe speak for some of the people still in the building?
I think that a lot of people in the building share my views, but they are disciplined. And I would not have expressed these views publicly yesterday because, as I said, I considered myself a public servant, and I'm very proud of the service I gave to the public.
But you're still a diplomat.
I'm still a diplomat. I'm a little bit less diplomatic than I used to be.